Earlier this year, I made a video detailing the ongoing discoveries of unused and cut content that has been documented so far on the Silent Hill franchise. I took the time to go over the entire series that saw creative and unique concepts which was initially considered but scrapped over time during development. And while that video holds up, I want to go back and redo that video properly this time, with a much more thorough investigation and dig through remotely everything I could find when it comes to cut content. And today, I want to restart this little series of mine on the game that started it all. This will be one of many videos going over the cut content of the Silent Hill series. Today, I will be covering the cut content of Silent Hill 1. Much of the cut content that is found in Silent Hill 1 is sourced from the official US PlayStation Magazine demo disc number 16. It allows the player to play the opening sequence titled Opening, with the nightmare section where Harry encounters the otherworld for the very first time, and then the cutscene of Sybil Bennett introducing herself to Harry in Cafe 522. After, we then have the Battle mode, which serves as the gameplay section, allowing experimentation with the inventory with such items as weapons, health, and other miscellaneous features that accompany Harry. Much of the gameplay section serves as an introduction to Midwich Elementary School, where you would normally progress throughout the final version of the game. However, the minor changes here are how you progress throughout the school itself, and then eventually having to escape. What's fascinating about this specific demo itself is the game files that are found. In the opening screen for the demo, there is a placeholder image with a background of flowers, accompanied by Japanese text that states, "This game contains violent scenes and depictions of grotesque situations." There is an early version of the 11th Street Doghouse memo, which has a black background and green text. In the final version, the background of the image shows pavement with bloodstains, alongside with the 11th Street Doghouse memo, with blue text on torn paper. The "To School" memo contains a black background with a piece of lined paper that has the text "To School" in red crayon, along with a black background. The final version features the same memo appearance, with the exception of having the pavement as the background itself. In the same alleyway with the "To School" memo, you can find Cheryl's sketchbook titled Drawing Block. In the early version, it featured the sketchbook with a black background and Japanese text on the top right of the image. The final version is much the same, although it has a detailed background, which is the pavement floor. In Midwich Elementary School, at the reception area, you can find a desk with a book containing writing and blood. In the demo version, you can see two images that are references to the films Pulp Fiction and Die Hard. In the final version, those images would be unused and replaced with stock images of a waterfall and of mountains. In the school laboratory, Harry would need to find an item called Chemical. In the demo version, it had a background image that accompanied the item itself, along with other chemicals on the shelf. Harry's flashlight beams its light on the item and the surrounding area itself. However, this background image would be later cut in the final version of the game. While on the rooftop of Midwich Elementary School, you would need to find the rubber ball to insert into a hole that would flush water down the drain to receive the classroom key. In the demo version, there is an early image of the rubber ball with rough textures of the water drain, along with the text "Dummy Still" in the top left corner of the image. This image would later be finalized in the final version with a more detailed background of the rubber ball and Harry's flashlight beaming on it. There's an image with a gray background with text in red that reads "Dummy Still" on the top left of the image, and a green transparent flag on the bottom right hand corner. The next image shows a green background with a white transparent cross to the left and a Japanese text on the right that reads "More Light." Another placeholder graphic shows another green background with blue Japanese text on the top that reads "Death is the end of every worldly sore." This is a quote from the novel Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. On the bottom of the placeholder image, it has a Japanese text that states "One image." The Game Over screen had a green background with red text that simply reads "Game Over" displayed. The item screen had the words "Item" displayed at the top with a real-life graphic of a Japanese dish called chicken katsu. The following images that are blurred on screen are nude photos of Japanese women, which I'm not going to show for obvious reasons, which were used as placeholders for the save and load screen in the options menu screen. Early renders of Alessa Gillespie, Cheryl Mason, and finally Lisa Garland hold some minor differences in their appearance compared to their final designs. After completing the opening sequence in the demo disc, you get leftovers of images that read, "To be continued," and shortly after, "Coming soon," with an image of Dahlia Gillespie inside Balkan Church as she stares ominously at the player. Upon completing the battle mode and successfully escaping Midwich Elementary School, you get a leftover image that reads, "To be continued," with a corpse in a wheelchair in the other world. The Konami IP, Track and Field, known as Hyper Olympic in Japan, released a 3D update of a previous version released only in Japanese arcades called Hyper Athlete for the PlayStation. This update would be called International Track and Field, which would be released globally in North America, Europe, and Japan. Much of the textures used in International Track and Field were translated into some of the textures in Silent Hill. In the game files, there are a couple of leftover textures in a folder named Test. These files show textures of hidden doodles from presumably the developers that are of either smiling faces or text in Japanese that are inserted as notes for the staff. This file, sh1thr2001f, contains Japanese text that reads, "It's a map." This next file, sh1thr3071f, contains very faint text that reads either sign or billboard. There are approximately 9 unused monsters found within the game files. All of these unused monsters have distinctive qualities in their appearance that are seen as more realistic in terms of real-world design that are completely different from the final monsters we see in-game. The file BTFY, or Butterfly, is of a butterfly-like monster that resembles much of the Fotstinger that you fight atop the post office in Otherworld Central Silent Hill. The file EL, presumably short for Manta Ray, given the appearance of the monster, resembles much of a real-life manta ray. Interestingly, the manta ray is located in the test files, possibly as a placeholder to test out the animations in physics, yet never intended to be an actual potential enemy. The file FRG, or Frog, depicts a monster-like frog with 2 arms in the front and 2 legs in the back. The file MKY, or Monkey, shows a depiction of a monkey with a bloodied mouth and a bruised face with sharp tendrils at the ends of their arms that are also covered with bloodstains. The file OST, or Ostrich, is a huge creature of blood on its mouth and feet. Its most notable quality is considerably the tongue that pokes at the player to deal damage. The file SNK, or Snake, has features resembling a snake. The only notable quality is that of its tongue, which functions similarly to the previously seen ostrich, which also shares a similar function when it comes to dealing damage to the player. The file CHK, or Chicken, depicts a heavily contorted chicken with qualities that resemble that of a newborn hatchling. Interestingly, the chicken has the most applied animations to its model out of all the unused monsters, as it was possibly intended to be featured as a boss fight, given its large, massive size. While the chicken would be scrapped, this would be repurposed for the Air Screamer, as it serves notable similarities, albeit with wings. The file BIG, or Big, is straightforward, as it is a big and large model of a monster that potentially would have served as a boss at some point, given its sheer size and scale. However, it's noticeably lacking in lots of qualities, only supporting a basic texture model, and only having one animation where it disappears completely. Lastly, the file SPD, or Spider, is an unfinished model of presumably a spider given the model's rig, containing 6 legs that are very reminiscent of a spider. Unfortunately, there's only rough-looking animations, but no actual model for the spider itself. The monster, Grey Child, an occurring enemy seen in the opening nightmare and the Midwich Elementary School section in-game, had quite an extensive development history when it came to conceptualizing and finalizing the monster. In the first phase, it depicted a childlike monster with human-like skin and black beady eyes with a mouth. In the second phase, it still had a childlike appearance with human-like skin, although the eyes are now removed, only supporting the mouth. The third design would be the final version of the Great Child that bears lots of similar resemblance to the previous design, although now supports grey-like skin and a smaller head on its model. The reason why the Great Child went through many redesigns is due in part to having human-like and childlike qualities that wouldn't have passed censorship laws in specific countries or regions globally. Supporting this is also the fact that the player needs to use firearms or melee weapons against the Great Child. On the topic of the Great Child, they had an early running animation that saw them skipping towards Harry when wanting to attack and deal damage. The final version shows a lack of a running animation and rather the Great Child slowly walking towards Harry. The larval stalker also had a human-like and childlike appearance featuring skin on its model. Much like the beta version of the Great Child, it too went through a heavy revision to remove any and all appearance that resembles that of a human-looking child. The final version of the larval stalker would support a transparent appearance that sees them as a pacifist type of enemy that can't deal damage to the player, nor the player dealing any damage. The beta model of Harry Mason was drastically overhauled compared to the final version. Originally, Harry supported a green sweater as opposed to his iconic brown leather jacket. The beta model also had rough and early animations that are either limited in the model's movement or very experimental to see the possibilities and restrictions that the developers can work with. Speaking of Harry Mason, there are a couple of unused animations that didn't make it into the final game. There's an animation where Harry's seen doing a karate chop hand motion that presumably would have been an attack animation towards an enemy. Another unused animation is Harry running sideways in either a left or right direction. Finally, Harry has an unused idle animation where he is seen crossing his arms as he waits impatiently. An early beta model of Sybil exists, although the only notable difference here is in the face and hair texture. The puppet nurse and the puppet doctor had unused beta designs compared to their final counterparts. Typically, there are 3 variations of the respective puppet nurse and puppet doctor, usually seeing a difference in the color of their clothing appearance or facial features and hairstyle. The same is no different with the beta puppet nurses and beta puppet doctors. The takeaway here is that many of the face models in the beta version look far more detailed compared to the final version, which is less detailed. Interestingly, there were earlier beta models that featured a similar looking nurse, but the parasite on the back of the respective nurse or doctor was far smaller in size. An early mock-up of a 3D map conceptualizing the town of Silent Hill is found in the game files. This early build of the town was most likely used as a reference to demonstrate an idea of the town's atmosphere and environment, as well as the size of the player model when roaming the streets of Silent Hill. Much of these early mock-ups of the 3D models in the locations explored throughout the game would actually go unused, yet still exist in the final game itself. For example, if we were to use the Silent Hill level viewer, a mod that ports the 3D maps from the game into the Unity engine, we can access a first-person camera and have free mobility to roam each level. Here, we can see that in the level, Midwich Elementary School, there are a couple of unused maps that were left in the game. The same is also applied to Alchemilla Hospital when exploring out of bounds of the map, with unused 3D models that were textured but scrapped and incomplete. Finally, an unused room with furniture, picture frames, and a symbol of the crucifixion of Jesus Christ is also found in the game files. The difference from the prior 3D models is that this room is noticeably finished with textures in its detail. There's an unused FMV of Cheryl Mason screaming. However, this FMV is an early iteration of the cutscene scene with Harry Mason finding the multiple TV monitors and the Otherworld Silent Hill Town Center. The difference here is that the final version has a black and white overlay with static effects added. In the resort area, Harry can enter a building called Annie's Bar, where he encounters a mumbler attacking Michael Kaufman, saving Kaufman in the process. After this exchange between the two, Harry can undergo an optional side quest that is important to acquire the Good Plus ending. At some point, Harry will end up in the garage of the motel to meet Kaufman once again. What's important about this particular encounter is that in the final version, after Kaufman leaves, Harry has lines that aren't voiced.
Unless you want to die, keep your mind on business. Got it?
However, in the trade demo, a review copy of Silent Hill has Harry's lines that are fully voiced.
Unless you want to die, keep your mind on business. Got it?
This guy's gotta be involved in a local drug racket. Man, is he pissed. In such a rush, too. That was probably dope in the bottle. Anyway, better let him do as he pleases. There's more than my life at stake.
There's an unused audio file titled first/coition.vab that has odd and mysterious sounds that appear seemingly innocent with birds chirping, to slowly transitioning into moaning, to the sounds of someone eating, presumably flesh. And that is all the cut content of Silent Hill 1, at least to my best knowledge, the most the community could compile and find in the past 2 decades since the game's release. Before I end the video, I want to give a huge thank you to the YouTube users Shetty, Rodolfo Nunez, and Falcon for their findings on the unused content that was previously thought inaccessible, but made a reality thanks to their hard work and dedication. Without their discoveries, these findings wouldn't be possible. Anyways, that's me. Thank you for watching, please have a great day, stay safe, and goodbye.